Welcome to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. I'm Mike Calabrese, joined by Sean Zerillo to look at the Thursday slate in the bigs. We got playoff baseball out the wazoo, a trio of game threes, and one divisional series already set. So we're going to have thoughts on all the game threes and the upcoming battle between the Phillies and Dodgers. So let's jump right into it. Sean, 3 p.m. Eastern on ABC, game 3 between the Tigers and Guardians. You like under 7.5. You also like Flaherty under 3.5 hits. So let me walk through this with you. Only 10 runs have been scored through this 2-game series thus far. First was a gem from Skubal and then some high-stress closing from Best. Got the Tigers through game 1 by a score of 2-1. And then in game 2, Cleveland broke the game wide open in the 8th when they shelled Melton. Half of the runs in this series came in the bottom of the 8th of game 2. So, Sean, I'm not surprised to see you on the total here. I think what's interesting, though, in terms of perhaps the nerves at the dish, you could argue that it's the pitching. I'd love to hear your rationale for why this has been so low scoring. Like, what are your projections calling for here? I know that we split hairs throughout the regular season, the difference between minus 115, minus 150. It's huge. It's a gulf. So when it comes to 7.5, how much juice are you willing to pay to go to the under, or would you consider going under 7?
Yeah, you could take under 7. Probably. So I've been shortening, or I've been elongating my price targets in the playoffs. Normally I set like a 2% edge bar for the regular season. I'm lowering it to 1% for the playoffs just so people actually are able to tail more readily. I make this 6.78. So regular season, I would probably set the cutoff at 7 and even money. Today, I'm willing to go to 7 minus 105 or 7 minus 110, minus 110, which is more of a break-even bet. Unfortunately, and this is, this was the reminder I gave out yesterday. It's the same reminder I'll give out today. If you follow me in the Action Network app, you were able to get the bet pretty quickly and able to get the 7.5 pretty quickly. It disappeared pretty quickly. The 7s were still there. It was recommended at the price target at that point. It looks like 7.5 minus 125 is available this morning. So I would play that. 7.5 minus 125 is fine. That is equivalent essentially to 7 at minus 105. I would prefer the 7.5 though, considering especially yesterday, the game lines on 7. Actually, you win your bet instead of pushing your bet. Now, was it a deserved push yesterday or not? It's tough to say because, yes, the Tigers scored 5 runs in the bottom of the 8th inning, but the Guardians did, but the Tigers also went 1 for 15 with runners in scoring position and stranded 15 runners on base. And through 2 games, they're now 2 for 23 with runners in scoring position. They've stranded 8 runners. I do make the Guardians slate favorites for game 3, minus 104. As I said, I make the total around 6 3/4. The bullpen arms, Tigers should technically have the better rested bullpen arms today. I'm not saying the better bullpen arms. I'm saying the better rested bullpen arms because the Guardians used Gaddis, Sabrowski, and Smith each of the first 2 days of the series. Smith also had to pitch out of quite a bit of trouble of his own making in the 9th inning yesterday. Ended up keeping our under on a push, but very much almost ended up pushing that over in the 9th as well. The Tigers really only used Holton in a multi-inning role yesterday. Otherwise, their bullpen should mostly be rested. The outs props for both pitchers, I believe, are 9.5 or very close to it. I think Flaherty's might be 11.5 and Cicconi's is 9.5. Flaherty's might be 12.5. So don't expect more than 3 or 4 innings for either of these pitchers. I think I had somebody DM me with a Cicconi under 14.5 outs ticket that they put like $3,000 on, which if that's a real ticket, good on you. They caught that at Bet365, I believe, yesterday afternoon was the timestamp on it. That's a tremendous bet. And it seemed like they were a Guardians fan and they were telling me like the Guardians pitching plan for today. And I basically agreed with all of it. I've yet to respond to them, but I will. They were talking about, Cantillo one time through, and, just going one time through each, essentially, with all these arms, not messing around, roll it over once, get a new arm in there, never get the second time through the order penalty, never let the offense get a second time look at the opposing pitcher. My concerns in terms of how this goes over, obviously one guy comes in, blows it up. Like that's a possibility in any bullpen game. More relievers you come in, eventually you're going to keep spinning the roulette wheel and end up, hitting 0 or double 0. You're going to keep rolling the dice and end up crapping out. But the other way, watching the game yesterday, Chase DeLauder for the Guardians, he had not played center field in over a year. And the Guardians decided to let this kid make his major league debut in center field. If you're unaware of Chase DeLauder's development, this guy sustained multiple leg and foot injuries throughout his minor league career, which kept derailing his development and kept stopping him from being able to play on the field. He hadn't played center field in over a year. I couldn't imagine putting a guy in a worse spot on the defensive spectrum than center field for his major league debut, considering he hasn't played the spot in over a year. Immediately dropped his first chance, was very rocky going back on another ball. The Guardians are clearly going to try to play their best offensive lineup for a second straight day because it didn't end up producing runs yesterday. But I do worry that either Bo Naylor behind the dish, who's not as good a defender as Hedges and not as good of a defender as Dylan Digler, or potentially DeLauder can't get to a ball in center field that he should, or could make another misplay in a ball that he shouldn't. So Guardians weakening themselves defensively voluntarily in order to put out a better offensive lineup. We'll see if that works out for them. But yeah, it didn't affect my total projection because I'm assuming that is the lineup they're going to play again. If they end up playing Hedges, if they end up playing a real center fielder, I'll like this under even more. But where it is currently, I'm comfortable, again, the 7 at -110. And you mentioned the Flaherty under hits prop as well. I bet 3 under hits props today. I've been kind of on fire with pitching props, but they've mostly been outs props. I thought the outs props were just a little bit short today, but considering where the outs props are, I actually thought the hits props were a little bit too high. And there's correlation there. The moment pitcher starts giving up hits, that bullpen is getting warm. So under 3.5 hits for Jack Flaherty and 2 other pitchers we'll get to today at Juice, I think are good looks compared to the outs props they have.
Yeah, we're kind of in the upside down here, this portion of the season. If you look at the regular season, a guy like Flaherty, 8-15 on the year, 4.64 ERA, you got to figure it's going to go over on the hits just because he's probably going to try to eat up some innings in a regular season game. But you look at his last 10 starts, 4 times he's gone sub 4 hits. And it's not outside the realm of possibility that he pitches, 2 innings here? I mean, what's your expectation in terms of his pitch count and his leash?
Yeah, it's with these guys, a lot of it's going to be, so you add up the outs, the hits, and the walks props, right? And you get to about 15, and you're like, oh, okay, maybe you get through 5 innings worth of batters, but that's not 5 innings worth of batters. That's 15 total batters. And you're like, oh, so that means it really just depends upon how many hits and walks they give up to reset to get to the top of the order for potentially a third time. Because they're not seeing the opposing order a third time. Maybe you go 1.5 times through, and then the moment you get to another string of lefties, you get pulled out of the game. The Tigers very intentionally stack their righties and lefties and alternate them so that you can't just bring in a lefty to blow through 3 left-handed hitters or even 2 left-handed hitters in a row. They make you face at least one righty if you're going to bring a left-handed reliever in. The Guardians do tend to stack their lefties a little bit more. So I think the Tigers particularly actually could be a little bit more aggressive with their bullpen usage because they're going to be targeting specific hitters, whereas the Guardians, I think, are going to be playing more time through the order, split with it, and just sort of rolling once and pulling Ciccone out. So, I mean, the Ciccone outs prop, at 8.5 or whatever it is, may even be too high. Like, he may only face 9 hitters total. If he gives up 1 hit or 1 base runner, he may be incapable of going under that or going over that number. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit more matchup based for the Tigers and a little bit more time through the order purity for the Guardians. But I really don't see either of them getting to the leadoff hitter a third time. You may just face, righties at the bottom of the opposing order or in the middle of the opposing order a second time before coming out.
We look to the next game 3, this time between the Padres and Cubs, 5 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. You like the Cubs money line and both pitchers, the starters at least, under 3.5 hits allowed. Even less scoring in this matchup between the Cubs and the Padres in the first series we discussed. Before we get to your side, though, let's look at this trend that you're riding. Both sticks, both lineups struggling at the dish. Jameson Taillon, Yu Darvish, as I mentioned, both have their props set at 3.5. Just like Flaherty in the first game, we discussed the pitch count, the innings target versus the expectations of potentially a dominant performance. We're not going to see that from Flaherty, but you could see that from Darvish here. Yu hasn't pitched, by the way, in the 7th inning since July, but Taillon is all over the map. His pitch counts have been in the 60s and the hundreds in the past 2 months. So I'll be interested to hear your take on where you think he lands in this pivotal game 3. On the side of things, though, you're riding with the Cubs. Do you feel like the Padres' dominant bullpen, they came in with the lowest ERA of any bullpen in the majors heading into the postseason? Do you feel they're more vulnerable having dipped into it for the third straight day here, as they will here this afternoon, early evening? They use their lefty, Maury Hone, and their righty, Mason Miller, in back-to-back games. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. Just slightly more vulnerable today. I mean, I wouldn't anticipate that those guys are unavailable. They will be available. They just may be 10% less effective, 20% less effective than they would have been yesterday on a second consecutive day as opposed to a third consecutive day. Guys aren't used to pitching 3 consecutive days. It happens occasionally. They rarely do it throughout the year, though. More oftentimes pitching a third time in 4 days, not pitching 3 consecutive days. Now, concerning these starting pitchers, these out totals are pretty similar, if not lower on average than the Guardians Tigers outs totals. Darvish at 10.5 and Jamison Tyone at 9.5. So another like 1.5 times through the order type of projection for these guys. Probably not going to see the leadoff hitter for the opposing lineup, which is a lefty, a third time. So very likely aggressive bullpen usage here from both of these teams. The Padres, as you said, a little bit more usage of their high leverage guys, but the Cubs did dip into their longer relievers yesterday because they used both Colin Ray and Michael Soroka. I think he wants to go by Michael now. They used both of those guys in relief. So I would have anticipated initially maybe Colin Ray a time through, Tyone a time through, and then an inning each for every reliever remaining in their bullpen. They don't really have a bridge necessarily to Tyone today, unless they just go 5 outs for every one of their relievers, which I think they're probably going to do. They didn't have to throw Danny Palencia yesterday. They may try to get 2 innings out of him again. And then everybody else who pitched aside from Ray yesterday, even Ray, I think, went 2/3 of an inning. Basically, everybody else should be available and didn't throw too strenuous of a workload yesterday. Palencia, Keller, Kittredge, Pomerantz, Rodgers, and Tealbar. You'll see the lefties, Pomerantz, Rodgers, Tealbar, against the top of that Padres order, against their lefties in the middle, and then they'll just play matchups with the righties otherwise. So, yeah, I certainly still favor the Cubs. I mean, I think they're the better offense on paper. I think they're the better defensive club on paper. I think the bullpens are pretty comparable for Game 3. I think the starting pitching is pretty comparable for Game 3, but they do have home field advantage. I make them around -128. I bet their series price before Game 1. If you did not bet their series price, stake your Game 3 bet normally up to about -118. I said I make them -128. So -118, -120, fine for Game 3. That was roughly where their series price was before Game 1 was -118, -120. So Cubs, money line, double down or not double down, but stake it normally if you don't have a series price. I would half it if you do have a series price and you're essentially just doubling down on your position, but was a half unit previously, but just bring it up to a full. And then I'm avoiding the under here. I wanted to bet the under, considering the bullpen usage is going to be extreme, but the weather is not what it is in Wrigley today that it was the past 2 days. Wind was blowing in the past 2 days. Unders for Wrigley Field systems triggering based upon the wind direction and speed today. It's 80 degrees and there's really no wind effect at all. It's swirling, blowing out a little bit, but very minimal wind impact in general, which does make Wrigley more of an offensive leaning park again. When there's no wind at Wrigley does tend to play a little bit offensive friendly. So I make this total about 7.4. I would pass on the number. I would consider a live under once these bullpens get fully cooked and come into this game. Would want to avoid potential early run scoring against these starters. But to that point also, I don't think these starters are getting left in long enough to give up 4 hits. I think you're getting, as I said, about 15 batters maximum from either guy. And the moment they give up, 3 hits in a row, they're probably getting yanked anyway, if not 2 hits in a row. So Darvish under 3.5. Tyone, I believe, also under 3.5. Or I can't remember if I bet under 3.5, under 4.5 last night. I fired these so late, but under on both pitcher hitter props, 3.5 for both respectively, along with Flaherty. All good to I'd say -150 for Darvish and Flaherty, and then -135 for Tyone based upon their projected outs props and their batted ball profiles as well.
Which player were you saying is waffling between Mike and Michael?
Soroka.
So, as a Michael myself, I have to break it to him. Mike Vick went through this too. It was Michael Vick at some point, and then he basically made a decree. It's now Mike Vick. If you're a Michael, you don't get to choose. It's like being a Matthew or a Matt or a Ben or a Benjamin. If it's that close, it's dealer's choice, in my opinion. It's not like a William, are you a Bill, are you a Will situation. That one you get to choose. I very rarely get to weigh in on this subject, but I'm passionate about it. And if you're a Mike or a Michael, you just have to deal with what people call you, unless you have
Does it
yourself a nickname.
impact your opinion at all that he's Canadian?
I'm actually surprised. Canadians are usually like the nicest people on earth, and they're just like, call me whatever you want, pal. So I'm a little bit surprised that he's putting his foot down on this, but good for him, I guess. I'm in the other camp when it comes to differentiating. All right, before we move on, don't forget to sign up for the Action Network Pro, which gives you real-time pick alerts from experts like Sean, Derek Carty, and our entire Action Network team. Plus, you can get access to our pro projections powered by Sean Kerner and our predictive analytics team. Just go to actionnetwork.com/pro to get $20 off the annual price with promo code PAYOFF20. So don't miss out on the best bets at the best prices. Visit actionnetwork.com/pro and use promo code PAYOFF20 and get $20 off a year of Action Pro. We turn to the final game 3 here on Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern on ESPN, the Red Sox against the Yankees. This feels like a tense, every at bat, every base runner matters kind of series between the Sox and the Yanks. I think it's a welcome return to the rivalry here in October. This is high theater playoff baseball in the Bronx. And thus far, we haven't seen either side implode or allow a massive inning that would ruin a game under. So you like the under 8 here. And I think what's interesting, we haven't even seen a 3-run inning yet, let alone any explosive scoring. So certainly that's been the trend line. But we're far away from the quality pitching that we saw in Game 1 between Fried and Crochet. The baby-faced Conley early gets the ball for the Sox with all of 19 innings worth of professional work on his resume. The Yanks are countering with a young star of their own in Cam Schlitter. When Schlitter is rolling, he is a strikeout artist, but he can lose the zone, so something to keep an eye on early. Do they have a quick hook on him and go to the bullpen? You have faith in these young arms to suppress some scores, at least to avoid that explosive inning that could ruin it under early. But what about these bullpens on day 3 of the series?
Yeah, I actually like both of these guys a bit, and I think they're both going to be a little amped up, throwing a little bit harder, especially if you know that you're not going more than one time through the order. And this is why I've avoided strikeout prop unders for these pitchers too. When I expect them to go in a shorter stint, it doesn't necessarily to me correlate with a strikeout under, because you can just air out the ball a little bit more, maybe consolidate your pitch mix and become more of a reliever for the stint that you're out there. You're not trying to set up hitters for a second or third plate appearance with your pitches in your first plate appearance. You're just trying to get them out and get through them. So I do think, we can hold the scoring with these starting pitchers. Connolly early is, in my opinion, the Red Sox second most talented starting pitcher arm right now, even compared to everybody else who started a game for them this year. I think he's their second best arm other than Crochet. It's just he's thrown 19 innings. He's 23 years old. He's a rookie. And he's going into Yankee Stadium for his first career postseason start against the number one offense against left-handed pitching this season. So it's not a good matchup, but I'm hoping that he will at least meet the moment with his arm talent and hold the Yankees hopefully to 1 run across 3 innings. I don't think he faces more than 10 batters, though. So I'm not even sure if he gets through a third inning. His out prop is listed at 8.5 plus money to the under. So the market doesn't necessarily think he gets through 3 innings either. My projected pitching plan for him would be 10 batters. You face Trent Grisham twice, and you come out of the game before Aaron Judge a second time. Maybe if Judge is, up, bases empty, 2 out, 1 out, maybe you face Judge a second time, and then you have 2 lefties likely behind Judge in Bellinger and Rice. So it's probably somewhere between 10 and 12 batters, 10 and 13 batters for Connolly early in this game. The Red Sox used basically their whole bullpen except for Chapman yesterday, but only 1 reliever, and I don't have it here. Oh, Whitlock. Only Garrett Whitlock should be unavailable or at least banged up today. He threw 41 pitches yesterday, but everybody else in that bullpen should be available. I would forecast 5 to 6 outs for Chapman again, like he got from 4 outs in game 1. He wasn't great across 2 innings, but at this point, they really have nothing to lose. You put your best pitcher in the game for 2 innings if you can in a decisive game 3, especially considering he had an off day yesterday. The Yankees did use Bednar, Williams, and Cruz over each of the first 2 games of this series. So the Red Sox bullpen is in better shape for tonight. I make the Yankees around minus 135. So there's no value for me on the side, but I do make the total about 7.1, and there is still actionable value on the under 7.5 right now. I like that. On a normal day, I'd like it to minus 105. I'm going to call it minus 110 again here for these game 3s. Chillier weather in the Bronx tonight, 64 degrees at first pitch. And we've got a nice little breeze blowing in from that short porch in right field as well. So the final ball in play of that game last night, off the bat, I thought it might have been a game-tying home run out to that short porch in right field. You just never know off the bat with that stadium. But hopefully we get a similar result on a similar batted ball tonight that just gets slightly knocked down by the wind. But yeah, under in game 3 between Yankees and Red Sox, expecting aggressive bullpen usage on both sides. Again, nobody's going to get left out to dry. Under to 7.5 at minus 110.
As I mentioned at the top of the show, one divisional series already set here in the NL between the Phillies and the Dodgers. You like the Dodgers to win in exactly 5 games at plus 320. You also like them to win the pennant at plus 225. Dodgers made quick work of the Reds, giving them an extra day to rest their pen, get their starters in line for the series against the Phillies that starts on Saturday. You're playing the boys in blue, as I mentioned, in 2 different ways. Walk me through what you're thinking specifically series script wise and why you want them in a pivotal game 5 in South Philly and potentially an opportunity to hedge with a plus 320 ticket in your pocket.
Yeah, so I'm expecting the Dodgers to use 4 starters in the series. I'm expecting the Phillies to use 3. So game 1, I have Ohtani at Sanchez. I make the Phillies about minus 105 in that game, I believe. It's the only game in the series that'll favor the Phillies. It's probably the only game the rest of the NL playoffs that I'll make the Dodgers an underdog. It might be the only game the rest of the playoffs, period, that'll make the Dodgers an underdog. It really depends upon their matchups and their opponent in the potential World Series if they get there, But yes, game 1, I'll favor Sanchez and the Phillies. Game 2, I have, I believe, Snell getting back on full rest for game 2 against Luzardo. I make the Dodgers a slight favorite there. I favor them in game 3 bigger than any other game, with Yamamoto presumably going against Ranger Suarez at home. Assuming Glasnow will take the ball in game 4 instead of Ohtani coming back, because they're not going to use Ohtani on short rest. So assuming Glasnow in game 4 against Sanchez at home, and Sanchez is always worse on the road than he is at home. That's something that's been much discussed this year. And then game 5, anticipating Ohtani against Ranger Suarez back in Philly if necessary. So I project the Dodgers as a favorite in every game after game 1. I would bet them now to win the pennant. I think you may get their final peak price after game 1, because I don't really show value betting on the Dodgers in game 1. I align with the market, and it's obviously Philly's best chance to win a game. And if they do win a game, the Dodgers are going to float back up to an even better price for the pennant or for the series in general. And I'll probably bet them to win the series at that point. If they do lose the first game, I'll certainly bet their pennant odds again if they lose the first game. Right now, headed into the NLDS, Fangraphs has the Dodgers as low as 38% to win the NL. That's plus 163 implied. The BAT is the most optimistic projection. Derek has them at plus 107 to win the National League, and the consensus odds are around 41% and plus 145. So even if you take the least optimistic projection, it's hard not to justify a value bet on the Dodgers north of 2-1. I took plus 225 at Caesar or at ESPN Bet last night. I have a lot of my Mariners futures there too from free bets that they gave me earlier in the summer. So they're not going to like me very much if the Mariners and Dodgers end up making the World Series. But I do think the Dodgers are the clear value side in the National League in terms of projections and in terms of the math. I don't think you can ignore a price on them at 2-1 or higher right now.
That'll do it for today's episode of Payoff Pitch. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to tail some of the bets that you heard in today's episode, look for the quick slip links in the episode description or visit actionnetwork.com/betnow. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app and leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to the pod. Also, check out our new AI quick slip bot on X. Just tag Playbook @Playbook and tell it to grab whatever bets you're looking for, and it'll create a quick slip link for you in a matter of seconds. We'll be back on Monday for more playoff discussions, so stay tuned for that. Make sure to update your podcast feed. As always, you want to be able to hear these bets, get them in as soon as they cross Sean's lips. You want to get the best bets at the best prices. For Sean Zerillo, I'm Mike Calabrese. Thanks for listening to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. And as always, best of luck with all your bets.